Yeah, cool.
context and this is part of the program and so on, and then I'll give over to Mukhtar to
Cool.
present the session and you and everything. Hello, Mukhtar.
Nice. I wanted to play music. So it'd be. You couldn't put on some music, could you? Yeah, just like.
Shall I? Okay, I'll start. Yeah.
There's still
مساء
people coming.
الخير.
All good.
مساء الخير. أنا ريما مسمار مديرة الصندوق العربي للثقافة والفنون آفاق. هيدي البانل أو التوك اللي جايين تحضروها اليوم بس بدي الثقافة والفنون. آفاق بشكل كتير سريع هي مؤسسة ارت، الفنون الأدائية، الفنون البصرية، السينما، الموسيقى وغيرها. وكانت واحدة من التحديات اللي نحن بنعرف انه عم تواجه المؤسسات وكمان عم تواجهنا كمؤسسة داعمة، هي انه كيف نقدر نفكر بالاستدامة. يعني كيف ممكن المؤسسات اليوم اللي بتشتغل او بتتعاطى ثقافة وفنون بالمنطقة العربية ممكن نتفكر باستدامتها من خلال اي ادوات، وكيف ممكن نفكر حتى خارج المعتاد، لانه بنعرف انه بالاخر الفاندنج لاندسكيب او المشهد التمويلي بشكل عام بالمنطقه وبالعالم منه كتير يعني ميال للإنتاج الثقافي والفني، وهو ميال أكثر لقضايا من نوع آخر. فقررنا بسبب خبرتنا، بسبب سنوات العمل الطويلة بالصندوق، أنه يكون هذا البرنامج هو موجه للمؤسسات فقط بالمنطقة العربية بالثقافة والفنون عم تشتغل، ويكون برنامج مبني على التدريب وعلى الكيس ستاديز أو حالات دراسة اللي ممكن من خلالها نفهم شو عم بيصير حوالينا بالعالم، شو عم بيصير بمناطق بتشبهنا، شو هي التحديات اللي بتواجه هيدي المؤسسات، وكيف ممكن نرجع نعيد التفكير بمؤسساتنا من زوايا مختلفة لنقدر نفكر بالاستدامة. والاستدامة مش بالضرورة تكون فقط متعلقة بالمادة أو بالمصاري، طبعا هي جزء كتير كبير وهو جزء كتير مهم، إنما هذا منه جزء منفصل كمان عن كيف منفكر بكيف منقدم نفسنا، كيف منطلع على دورنا ومهمتنا، كيف منطلع على السياق اللي نحن عايشين فيه. ستوري تيلينج او السرد هو جزء اساسي من شغلنا كمؤسسات، كيف منقدم حالنا، كيف منقدم قصصنا، كيف منتخيل برامجنا، وكيف بنقدر كمان نتواصل مع جمهور اوسع، سواء كان الجمهور المباشر يلي كمؤسسات عم نتوجه له، او اذا هذا الجمهور هو جمهور داعمين من افراد من مؤسسات. هيدا الورشة اللي لأول سنة من البرنامج عم بتصير، ابتدت امبارح وباقي ليوم الأحد، عم بشارك فيها 8 مؤسسات من المنطقة العربية. كل سنة فيها بتتألف من 3 ورش عمل. بتاني ورشة عمل فكرنا انه لانه عم نحكي عن موضوع يعني ممكن يهم جمهور اوسع كمان من المؤسسات المشاركة، ولنفيد كمان مؤسسات ما عندها كان الفرصة أن تشارك بالبرنامج، حبينا أنه هيدي السيشن تكون أكثر عامة ويكون فيها دعوة للي بحب أنه يسمع عن هذا الموضوع أكثر. بدي أشكر المؤسسات المشاركة والمسؤولين عنا اللي هن موجودين معنا اليوم، وبدي أشكر كمان الخبيرين اللي هن مسؤولين عن ورشة العمل الثانية، روبرت وولف ومختار كوكش. رح أترك الكلمة لمختار ليقدم هيدا السيشن ويقدم روبرت، وبتمنى أنه تكون مفيدة هيدي الجلسة. شكرا لحضوركم.
أهلا. Thank you, Rima. Thank you all for coming today. I'm very excited to present Robert and to also be a student and a learner today in this event. We've had the luck of working with Robert over the last few days, guiding us in the principles of design thinking and all sorts of other tools and techniques to help us broaden our minds and ways to approach problem solving at various levels. But I'm specifically excited to present Robert's intervention today to you because it's going to gather many of his talents and expertise and guide us into a conversation and brainstorming opportunity about the role of storytelling and how central it is for leadership, for team development, but also in the design of ideas and the generation of discourse. Robert has many, many years of experience. He's had many, many hats as an artist, as a management consultant. He's worked all over the world, in India, Brazil, the UK. He's Australian and Dutch. He has written stories for children. He's written scripts. He's a member of the Think Academy, which is an Amsterdam-based school of creative leadership. He likes cricket.
That was the most important thing.
Yeah, you mentioned that. And yeah, so without further ado, I'll just pass it on to Robert.
Thank you very much. Thanks, man. I think I'm like that. Hello, hello. So, it was 1982, and I'm in a baseball stadium, because we have in Holland one baseball stadium. And I don't know if you've ever been to a baseball stadium, but maybe you can imagine that it's more of a man's world, right? 80% are men with a t-shirt and a baseball cap. And I'm there, 14 years old, with a t-shirt and a baseball cap, with my mother in a yellow summer dress. She and I are sitting, watching the Netherlands play Cuba. And if you've been to a baseball stadium, maybe you know that they bake hamburgers there all day so you can smell them all the time. And that there are little guys who sell ice cream, and they are shouting, ice cream, all the time. And you hear the baseball being hit by those aluminium bats that they use during the World Championships, which is what we're watching. And the game Holland-Cuba is a big one. Cuba is big in amateur baseball. So almost everyone is completely following the game, except for one guy. There's one guy who is standing with his back to the game, and like Eddie Murphy, he's doing a bit of a stand-up comedy routine. So he's making jokes to the audience, and he's buying ice creams and giving them away. And as he gets warm and starts to get better and better, people start laughing and start listening to him instead of to the baseball game. And almost everyone really likes it, again, except for one guy. There's a guy in a red t-shirt and a bit of a thick neck sitting 2 seats next to my mom who doesn't like it. And he stands up at one point and he starts shouting at the Eddie Murphy character. And he says things like, I did not come to the baseball stadium to listen to this kind of nonsense. And he goes on and on and on a bit, and then he adds quite a bit of racist, a bit restless. And I think, oh my God, before you know it, she will try and intervene. She will try and do something. And you know when you're 14 and in puberty, the last thing you... And she knows me well as well, of course, so she takes my hand and gives it a reassuring kind of squeeze, and then stands up. And then turns to this guy and says that she didn't come to the baseball stadium to listen to his kind of nonsense. So then she tells him what she thinks of him, and then she sits down again. People around us are no longer watching the baseball. People around us can feel this ain't over yet, right? There's this tension in the air. And then the guy with the red neck and the red shirt and the big neck, he bends over and he takes his bag and he puts his bag under his arm and he leaves the stadium. And a little ripple of applause goes by, sort of for my mom, that she had won the duel, if you like. And I'm still 14 years old, still in puberty, I'm still embarrassed. But I'm also feeling a little mixture of pride sort of thing, right? That my mom did do it in an environment that was not safe for her, that she did stand up for something that was important to her. And it's my guess that you know those moments too. that you know that there are those moments when you stand up for something that's so important to you that even though the environment might not be safe or it's risky to do so, that you would stand up for something that you believe in. And of course, my call to action or my hope is that you continue to do so. And tonight is perhaps about that, who knows, maybe telling a story might help you to achieve those things that you want to stand up for. So welcome. My name is Robert Wolf, and I thought it would be befitting this evening to start with a story instead of telling you where I live and things like that, right? So can I ask you, because I really love for tonight to be interactive, so can I ask you, what is the effect on you of the story, of me starting with a story? So let me first ask over here, and then I'll come over there. So what's the effect on you that I start with a story? Breaks the ice, great. Surprising. It's different than you expected, cool.
Fun.
It's got a fun element, nice.
Concentration.
It makes you concentrate, very good, great. There's one up there.
Transform this place into the baseball stadium.
But you know what? The seats are a bit like the baseball stadium, right? It's awesome. So yeah, you transfer the place to the baseball stadium. That's it. Well, who's going to be the guy with the... yeah, we'll get there. Maybe what's the effect of the story on you guys?
Perhaps you gave us a small anecdote about yourself to make us closer to you.
Nice. So the effect is you feel you know someone a bit more. You feel closer to the person.
Feel more comfortable.
Very good. Great. Hey, I understand that we're streaming this as well, and that we allow the people on Facebook, I guess it is, to ask questions or respond from time to time as well. They're not as important as you guys. Don't worry. That's clear. So, yeah, so starting with a story does have those aspects of concentration, of fun, of feeling connected, maybe transporting to a different place, right? And that can be very useful. But I'd like you, if you would, I'd like to ask a few questions to you that if you could, you would first ask your neighbor, and so you can discuss with your, in a pair, and then I'll hear a few of your answers. So I'll do that a couple of times tonight. So have a quick look around. Who's going to be your buddy? Is there someone that you don't know is maybe even more fun? So but just have a quick look around. And we can have a group of 3, right? So we can discuss like that, and halfway through I will say, find a new buddy. But for the first half, you're safe. You got a buddy. Good. All right. Here's my question for you. I would love for you to think through this question. Why would you, as a leader of a project, or someone who's standing up for something, why would you, in your business, in your project, why would you ever use a story? Why? Why, as a leader, use stories? Can you ask that question to each other? You got 2 minutes. Go. And you too. I need to cough. If it's not easy, I'll just cough. Don't worry. Maybe. All right. All right. Good. Now let's hear a few answers from you guys. And as I started over here last time, let me start on the side first, and then we'll also try and get a microphone up there. So can I hear from one of you? Why would you, as a leader, use a story? Who would have a go at answering that from this audience here?
I could answer that.
Great.
Well, Hello. So basically, I think when you're a leader, you want to capture people. You want to, kind of like get their attention, kind of charm them in a way, or, get them to you. So I think one of the very most, I think, what do we say, effective way of being that is by telling a story.
Very
And
good.
I'm a tour guide, so usually during when I'm tour guiding, when I tell stories, everybody's listening. And when you talk about history, like 3/4 are listening.
Very
So
good.
basically, it's only but when I begin a story that everybody has their eyes like this, and this is when I can, get them.
Very good.
So yeah. So
Very good. So it's about getting them, right? It's
Yes.
about grabbing an audience, connecting and charming them.
yes.
I like it. Very
Yeah, and
beautiful.
concentration, as you said.
It's good. Thank you so much. Can I now ask this side here? Perhaps if you wait for the mic, people at home might be able to hear too.
When the leader tell a story, he get the attention of the people, and he transform his idea or the motto to the people in an easy way, and people remember his slogan or idea, and he forget his name or the name of the leader. This is he captures the attention of the audience.
Very
Yes,
good.
sir.
So it's about capturing attention and then transferring your idea. And you said something about not forgetting it too, right?
Yes.
Very, very good. One more from someone up there. Is that your hand up or are you playing with your hair? It's very dangerous to play with your hair tonight.
Okay. So I was thinking that actually as a leader, sometimes you have to prove a point or have an argument about something so you can convince the mass population or maybe your team members or whatever. So telling it as a story is way more effective than telling it as an abstract point of view. It's gonna make the argument more concrete and more closer to the people to understand and maybe to convince them.
Very good. Couple of arguments there, but the main point is like convincing people. Being concrete helps, right? And a story helps you be concrete and helps convince them. Did you have something to add, or is it said already? Yeah.
Inspiration, I think.
To inspire people. Very good. Great. Thank you. Hey, I've got three that will kind of be a summary, but maybe they will add something to what's been said. The first thing, coming back to your point as well. Like, people don't just follow ideas, right? They will follow people. And if you have that better connection, I'll tell you a quick story to make that point, okay? There's a psychiatrist called Antonio Damasio, Portuguese, but he went to America in the 50s and became like one of the best psychiatrists in the country. And there was a corporate lawyer in New York. The poor guy got a brain tumor. And the surgeons had to cut certain parts of his brain from each other to remove it. And they were very curious, what the effect would be, but the guy could still pass every IQ test. They did lots of tests, and he passed every IQ test. So the doctor said, fantastic, success, cured. But then he went back home, and within a couple of months, he lost his job, he lost his wife, he lost his house, and he was living in the spare room of his brother by the time he was sent to Antonio Damasio, because no one could find out what was wrong with him. Antonio couldn't find out either in the first session, up until the moment that Antonio asked him, when would you like your next session to be? And the guy opens his diary and he says, well, I could do next Wednesday, I could do next Thursday, I could do next Friday. The guy had a lot of time. Antonio says, so which day do you want? And the guy goes, I can do next Wednesday, I can do next Thursday. And it was a moment that Antonio discovered he could not make decisions. And he went and researched it further, and he established a connection between feelings and decision making. And his conclusion was, if you are not feeling something, it's really hard to make a decision. So if you as a leader want to influence people to make a decision to do something, right, to change something or to go left or right, generating feelings is actually very important. And stories are a really good vehicle for generating feelings in people that will support decision making. That is one of the points I have for you. And memory, I think you touched on it, true, right? It's much easier to remember a story than a bunch of facts. Good. All right, I got one more question for you and your buddy, though. This is the question. Telling stories is all very good, but why would you as a leader tell a story from your own life? Because I'm saying that that is a good idea. I didn't tell a story about someone else in a baseball stadium. I told a story about me in a baseball stadium. Why would you as a leader tell a story about you, about a personal story? Can you ask that question to your buddy? Why personal? Go. Yes, I can have a little glass of water, a bottle of water. How are we doing? Sound okay? Thank you. All right. Okay, now let's see what we think about this. Okay? So why would you tell a story from your personal life? Let me see if I can find someone who hasn't spoken yet. Great, I've got two people there.
Okay, I was just telling Rima. Okay, memory is not my story.
Yeah, she'll tell a story later and then you'll
Yes.
remember.
That I just came from a class of public speaking, and I had one of my students do a speech on autism. And it was about her two young brothers who had autism. And it's just supposed to be an informative speech, but the minute she got up and started telling her speech and said, I have two young brothers, she started crying. And no matter what she had said afterwards, of course she stopped, then she continued later, but no matter what she said afterwards, the entire audience had empathy for her, even if she said nothing after that. But it was just that one point that created a link and a very strong feelings from the whole audience. So I think empathy for me would be...
Thank you. Like you become so real, and it becomes a very real connection because of that. Thank you so much. Beautiful.
I think it also breaks the hierarchy between a leader and the
Great.
followers, basically. So they would feel they're on the same level, and this would inspire them to follow the leader, basically.
Great. That you can connect like people, not leader, follower. Very good. Thank you very much. Good point. And one more down here. We can just, it's right behind you, the mic.
Okay,
on that side.
Okay. A leader, he inspires his follower and his team. So all the followers believe by his speech. So for this reason, the leader, he can influence all followers.
It's great. So because they believe in him, then that way he can influence them. Thank you. Very good. I'll throw my few points up. Actually, you already said that, right? Like this resembles the connection between people will actually help in. I often get sort of more humble leaders. They say to me, I don't want to talk about myself. It's not about me. It's about the project. It's about the impact. I don't want to talk about myself. You can probably understand that, right? Well, here's the funny thing. If you don't share your reasons why you're doing something, why you're leading a project, why you're trying to achieve something, the way human beings work is they will make it up. We can't stand the vacuum that well. So our mind, subconsciously even, is going to make up your reasons for doing what you do. And maybe you won't always like the reasons that we make up, right? So maybe it's better to take some control about the perception of your deeper why. Why are you standing up for something? So that is one reason to actually tell the stories that matter from your own life. And the last one relates to the story about the autism speech. In a sense, when you tell a story about your life, it changes you when you're on stage. You become more human. You become, as a leader, more of a whole person. And that affects how you speak, how you connect. So it's good for how you feel. Okay. This is the sort of plan I have for tonight. And I'm happy to change it as we go along if needed, right? My idea was to share 6 little storytelling techniques with you. Some are very, very simple. Some are a lot more complicated, but I'll give you a bit of a range. Okay, that's kind of fun. Maybe something you can immediately apply. And then I have 2 examples, 2 videos of how you might use a story. Like, where do you put it in your speech? Or what are you trying to achieve with it? And these are the 2 uses I've got, right? So to make a point memorable and emotional, and that will be using the story at the close of your speech. And you can also open with a story, especially if you're setting up a call to action. And so we'll look at one example of that as well. So 6 storytelling techniques. Now, the best way to learn something, and the guys I'm working with know that, is of course learning by doing, right? So if I can give you 6 techniques and then invite you to practice it by telling a little story to your neighbor, to your buddy, then you will be able to apply it. But even better than that would be, and welcome guys, and good timing because we're just about to start with the good stuff, so come in. Even better than just practicing it would be to practice with a story first, and we have a neutral story, then learn the 6 techniques, and then see if we can improve the story. So just to have, let's say, an almost meaningless story to practice with, I'm going to ask you, so in pairs, you can work with someone else than you just did, or the same person, that's still okay, to just tell 1 minute, A talks to B, and tells the story of how you got up this morning. Right? It can be as simple as the alarm went, and then make a story out of it. It doesn't have to be exciting, but you can make it exciting if you want. I don't know what happened this morning in your life. And then I will just say, please switch now, and then the other person tells a story for 1 minute. This way we have a baseline story that we can experiment with the techniques I'll show you. So it'll be fun, okay? So if you're ready, find your partner, tell the 1 minute only story of how you woke up, and I know you have a story because you're here, okay? So go, 1 minute. Yeah, maybe you can rotate in, or you guys make it 45 seconds maybe, and all 3 can go. Get ready, get ready, get ready, and switch roles, please. Switch roles. Are we back? And get ready to stop. Get ready to stop. And thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. All right. I saw tears, I saw laughter. Must have been good stories. Very good. All right, are we ready? I'm going to give you 6 techniques when the bleeping stops behind me, which I hope is about now. Good. 6 techniques. I'll give them to you pretty quick. Would you mind if it doesn't matter what the brightness or the contrast is? Cool. 6 techniques. I'm going to throw them at you. Then you pick 1, 2, or 3 and add them to your story of how you got up. Okay? Here we go. Almost go. Nearly go. Cool. But the contrast was a bit off, right? It did need adjusting, I think. Cool. It's good. I'll tell you a story about how I was once doing a presentation and the brightness thing came up all the time. And because of that, we did something all different. Good. It's good. Maybe we can all shout advice at her and see what happens.
Sorry, I'm working with no screen.
That's better. Awesome. Thanks. All right. 6 techniques for you to pick and choose and apply. Here's the first one. Does anyone remember how I started my story? 1982, and I'm in a baseball stadium. I gave you an indicator of time and an indicator of place. Right? The famous one I had on the screen is once upon a time. That's a very generic time indicator, but it's a time indicator. Our human brain works like this, like if you hear a time and a place indicator, you go, ah, it's a story. And we are very good at listening to stories. We've had 10,000 flying hours in listening to stories, right? And then our ancestors have been doing it for millions of years, so we're good at it. So when we hear a time and a place indicator, we go into storytelling mode as a listener, but also as a teller. So usually it helps you, right? If I say, yesterday at the airport, you know the guy's going to tell a little story. Time and a place indicator, real simple. 1982 in a baseball stadium. Second one is present tense. Did I say it was 1982 and I am in a baseball stadium? Because I remember I accidentally said it was 1982 and I thought, oops, that was a mistake. So I wanted to say it is 1982 and I am in a baseball stadium. Why is that different from I was in a baseball stadium? What's the difference? Great. It's like you were saying up there, right? It transports you. It has a sense of immediacy. The audience will go with you into that moment. You take the past here. Very good. Technique number 3. A vertical takeoff. I did not do this technique, so I'll just demonstrate it now. What a vertical takeoff means is you start at the most exciting moment of your story. And then you go back and fill in the backstory and you reach the exciting moment again. Movies do this all the time, right? So in my case, it might have been my mother and this guy with a thick neck are standing opposite each other and I don't know who's going to hit who. Where am I? I'm in a stadium in 1982, blah, 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 blah. Great? It's a way of grabbing your audience in the first 7 seconds. Because our attention span is getting shorter and shorter over the decades. So we need to do more to grab the attention of our audiences. I don't know if you guys ever watch a movie from the 60s or 70s, and then you have to go through the credits at the beginning of the film, and it takes like 5 minutes before the story starts. If you watch a modern film, it's like, boom, we need to hook you before you switch to a different channel. Technique number 4. Lots of lots. Good. Now the first lots means many of. The second lots is an acronym. It stands for language of the, and what do you think that last word is that starts with an S? Language of the, could have been? What do you remember about the baseball stadium? Do you remember the hamburgers? It's the senses. So it's the language of smell, it's the language of sound, it's the language of sight. Right? And let's do a little exercise with that. Okay. So can I have a very brave volunteer who's going to come up here and risk looking foolish in front of everyone but not really care? Did I make it easy to come? Great. Come down. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Good. Guys, give him a hand. The guy's stepping up. Awesome. Well done. So, I'm going to ask you to tell your story of getting up in the morning.
Okay.
And then I'm going to challenge you. So I'll be the audience, and I'm going to give you hand signals for the type of sensory language that I'd like to hear. Right? For instance, do you think you can do this?
Yes, yes.
Cool. So if I go like this,
Okay.
then I'd love you to make sure that I, as an audience, can see what's happening in your story.
Okay.
And if I go like this, then you add some sound. And if I go like that, etc., etc.
Okay.
Okay? And they're all going to do this in a moment, so it'll be good. So if you just start, I'll start with helping you off by...
Okay.
Yeah.
So today at 8 o'clock in the morning, I wake up and...
What did you see, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to look at you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay. I woke up and then I start to recognize the weather outside.
Good. What did it look like? I still can't see it as an audience.
Yes. I look from the window.
Yep.
Yeah, and then I see the shitty weather. Yeah, and
give me a
and the
picture, because
voices.
shitty is still not a picture.
Okay.
Was it like dark clouds?
Yeah,
or?
dark clouds.
Nice.
Yeah, yes.
I start
So
seeing
was,
it.
Yeah,
You get it?
It was raining cats and dogs.
Nice,
Yes,
nice. I see
yeah.
cats, I see dogs. No, I got
Yeah.
you, I got you. All right, now, and now I'm going like this.
Then there's a lot of voices, just like the storm.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice.
And then I was so tired. Then
Good, and this is actually a sense as well, right? It's the kinesthetic sense, the sense of touch and feeling. I was
Yeah.
feeling tired. Very good.
Then I realized that I don't want to go to work. Then I sent an email in the morning.
Good, and I'm gonna stop you there. Give him a huge hand. Very, 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 very good. Thank you so much. Sorry, what was your name?
Anas.
Thank you. Ellis?
Anas.
Anas. I'll get there. So guys, I want you to tease each other with this. Because it's one thing to just hear me explain this, but to actually do it is going to change something in your brain, right? So what I'm going to ask you to do is be the audience while your partner tells the story again. And I was wondering if you two could perhaps team up here. Be an audience and be a demanding audience. Go like, I want to see something. I want to hear something. I want to smell something. I want to taste something maybe. I want to feel something. And your poor storyteller has to try and live up to that. So do it in pairs. 1 minute, the first person is the demanding audience, and I will say switch roles in a moment after a minute. All right? I want to see lots of hand gestures. Go. So asking for something. No. Push him. Push him. And get ready. And ladies and gentlemen, just stop there and switch roles. Switch roles. Switch roles. Go. And thank you. Very good. Thank you. Okay. So ladies and gents, I would love to hear one example of a sensory detail that maybe surprised you or it was just very good. Was there one in your story that sort of, wow, that was a really good sensory detail? Who's willing to share one? There must be one that made you laugh up there. No, no. I beg your pardon, not the whole story, just the detail. You don't want to share that either? No.
So this morning I woke up. Keep the microphone up. I woke up and I felt the warmth of a different body close to me. And
that is a sensory detail that I think will get your audience.
And the smell was not the smell of my cat, so it was someone else. And I still didn't find the end of the story, but yeah. And the question was, should I make coffee or not?
Very good. And actually, the word coffee is already a smell as well, right?
Yeah.
Because we're so used to that. Thank you. Let's give him some recognition. Thank you. Thank you for sharing anyway. I liked it. All right. So that's technique number 4, adding sensory language. We'd say use lots of lots. And I especially believe if you're practicing your story, put too many details in, find out which ones really work, and then tailor it back down to the 2 or 3, right? Sometimes people say, hang on, it has to be true, right? Yeah, I would think so too. Right? But they do sell hamburgers in the baseball stadium. My mom was wearing a summer dress. The only little problem is I can't remember if it was yellow. So I made that little bit up. But it could have been yellow. It's her favorite color. All right. Number 5, a technique to enhance your story is lowering your status as a storyteller and or showing vulnerability. Now, your example of your student who tells a story about her own 2 siblings, right? And then immediately that is vulnerability, in fact, so much that she cried, that actually creates a connection with an audience that, that gives the story so much more power. Now, to use it a technique almost feels wrong, right? Because vulnerability is about truth and about real connection. So it's more, I coach storytellers who go on stage and they just don't show any vulnerability. Then the technique is for them to understand that it's okay to do so. In fact, it's more than okay. That is what makes stories work. It's what makes stories real. It's why we want to listen to you. If you're just up here being tough all the time, it doesn't work. So the technique there is more trusting that it actually makes your story better. Lowering your status can be a technique. And you'll see people of high status, and we have an example a little bit later, they'll do it on purpose. They'll make fun of themselves. Why does it work? Well, status is by definition a relative concept. So it means it's in relation to someone else. So if I lower my status, by definition, you feel your status go up. And that feels good. Our brain just shoots off endorphins because we like higher status. So if I lower mine, you feel better. And that at technique level really works. Did I try in my baseball stadium to lower my status at any point? Does anyone feel there was that moment? What was it? Puberty. Exactly, like puberty, full of shame. That's a moment that I try and access my vulnerability and lower my status. I did it on purpose here, but I would have done it anyway, because I know that that makes stories more real. Also because you go away from this place here where you're trying so hard to get a certain effect. When you go to vulnerability, you add this layer to yourself. And vulnerability is also like, sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I don't know if this is going to work. I'm just here, right? And that is actually why storytelling is beautiful. All right, for the last one, and now we get a little technical, but I thought you might enjoy that too. And you don't have to use it if you don't like it. It's about creating tension in a story. And another word for tension in English is suspense. So I've got a little video that is called Surprise versus Suspense. So let's look at it. I'll stop it halfway and ask you a question.
What's the difference between suspense and surprise? Let's watch a scene from Edwin Porter's 1903 silent film, The Great Train Robbery, to find out. This film is considered America's first Western, even though it's shot in New Jersey. Anyway, in this scene, a band of desperados have hijacked a train and are in the process of robbing the passengers. Wow, a passenger made a run for it and got blown away.
That was a surprise, right? What would you do if you were the director or the editor and you wanted to create suspense instead of a surprise? Any ideas? What would you do? Say again, sorry? To see him in the eyes. Well, that would definitely create fear and an emotion, right? Good. Anything else? Slow it down.
Modification.
Say more?
Modification of video. We add something, make more happiness.
Create more noise and sounds. Good. Okay. So soundtrack stuff. Good. Anyone else?
Bringing him back to life.
Bringing him back to life. So that would be a surprise rather than suspense. But a big surprise, I'll give you that. How about this? So what we're going to do is we're going to cut in an extra shot that will show the guy with the bowler hat looking like he's going to try to make a run for it. And it will be a close-up of him. Excellent. So I want you to monitor your own experience as you watch it again. So we will watch just with that little close-up. And does your body feel different as you watch the same scene afterwards? Right? Some people say, sorry, I didn't get that. That's fine. But just see if that works for you. Here we go.
That was a surprise. But what if Porter had cut another shot into this scene? Like this one. Now when we cut back to the master shot, we've been alerted that the guy in the hat is up to something, even though we can't be sure exactly what it is that he's up to. From that point on, we experience the action in an entirely new light, because we now know enough extra information to have questions about what might happen. Will Mr. Fidget try to disarm the bandits? Will he try to join their forces? Or will he simply make a run for it? If he does, will he make it? And we usually get to see our question answered. Sometimes the outcome fulfills our expectations, and sometimes we're, well, surprised by the outcome. But at least we have expectations. And while it's sometimes fun just to be surprised, it's almost always more gratifying to be kept in suspense.
All right. That was Dave Monahan. So, did anyone really experience it differently? Like, what I believe happens there is that a very primitive part of our brain, that really the life and death part, even if you've seen this scene 100 times like I have, that part of the brain still goes like, oh my God, is he going to live? And I can feel that tension. And that is a tension that, therefore, you can sort of try and always access, because even if they know it, that part of your brain is still going to clench and say, oh my God, someone's going to risk their life. Did I try this in my baseball story? Was there a moment where I tried to create tension? Yeah. Exactly. Like the moment where I thought, oh my God, my mom is going to get up. So that's creating expectations about something dangerous, because I even said before, it's a man's world, right? So that you maybe also feel, ooh, if she gets up, and the guy had a thick neck, or I tried to make him a bit strong, so that you felt, oh my God, maybe if she gets up, or at least the 14-year-old thought that, right? And then I put the hand there, so then there are expectations that it's okay, and then the suspense came back. And now what's going to happen? So this is about transmitting information to your audience that someone's going to try something difficult and dangerous. It's about, like, oh, I'm going to try and swim this river full of sharks, and I can't even swim. Do you want to hear how it ended, right? It's creating tension about something that's difficult and dangerous. Good. So, you get to try this now. You get to make a pick of 1 or 2 or 3 of these techniques. Let me put them like this. And I would like you to tell the story again. And maybe you can find a new partner for it, right? If that works where you're sitting. If it doesn't, just tell it to the same partner. So try some of these techniques. If anyone puts all 6 in, please, I'd love to hear it also. But, you know, this morning at 7 a.m., I think, as we had, would already qualify. So take 1 minute, and then I'll say switch roles again, and then we'll go the other minute. See if you can apply some of these techniques. Okay? Get ready. Go. So we're 1 hour in. Okay, cool. And I wanted to go 1:15, or does it not matter? What's my target? And okay, finish up and, well, we'll see how you fix it. Switch roles. I'll give you a little longer than a minute now, minute and a half. Switch roles or finish up. Cool. All right. All right, finish up. And thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay. Good. Okay, I'm going to ask you to stop anyway, I'm sorry. Good. All right, guys, it's a good sign. The story, the volume level went up, the eyes were wider listening, so, you know, let's just assume that was the techniques at work, okay? Hey, I've got 2 examples for you, as I said. So one is to make a point, and the other one is to set up a call to action. So let's start with the first one. So let's look at that. But let's also look to see if you can recognize any of these techniques in these speakers. So I've got an Englishman with English subtitles, because English is sometimes hard to understand. And I've got an American without subtitles. So you see what works for you. The first one is Sir Ken Robinson. So he's an education specialist. This is cut from his TED Talk. So you can always go and see it again. Maybe you've seen it already. And I just wanted to say, this is the one we're going to do, right? So he has a point, and he makes his point in intellectual terms. And then he goes through his whole speech, and then at the end of the speech, he starts a story. And he tells a story at the end. And the effect of having a story at the end of your speech is that people are left with the feeling of that story, right? It's kind of leaving them with that feeling, and maybe then also they'll remember it more. So we're going to look at making your point with a story by closing with a story. So I've cut, or actually I didn't cut this one, but first just to hear intellectually what his main point is, and then we're going to go at the end of the speech and we will hear the story. Here we go. Sir Ken Robinson.
If you think that the whole system of public education around the world is a protracted process of university entrance, and the consequence is that many highly talented, brilliant, creative people think they're not, because the thing they were good at school wasn't valued or was actually stigmatized. And I think we can't afford to go on that way. Prompted by a conversation I had with a wonderful woman who most people have never heard of. She's called Gillian Lynn. Have you heard of her? Some have. She's a choreographer and everybody knows her work. She did Cats and Phantom of the Opera. She's wonderful. I used to be on the board of the Royal Ballet in England, as you can see. And anyway, during that I had lunch one day. I said, how do you get to be a dancer? And she said it was interesting. When she was at the school, she was really hopeless. And the school in the 30s wrote to her parents and said, we think Gillian has a learning disorder. You couldn't concentrate, she was fidgeting. I think now they'd say she had ADHD. Wouldn't you? But this was the 1930s and ADHD hadn't been invented, at this point, so it wasn't an available condition. People weren't aware they could have that. Anyway, she went to see this specialist. So this oak panelled room, and she was there with her mother, and she was led and sat on this chair at the end, and she sat on her hands for 20 minutes while this man talked to her mother about all the problems Gillian was having at school. And at the end of it, because she was disturbing people, their homework was always late and so on, a little kid of 8, in the end, the doctor went and sat next to Gillian and said, Gillian, I've listened to all these things that your mother's told me. I need to speak to her privately. So he said, wait here, we'll be back, we won't be very long, and they went and left her. But as they went out of the room, he turned on the radio that was sitting on his desk. And when they got out of the room, he said to her mother, just stand and watch her. And the minute they left the room, she said she was on her feet, moving to the music. And they watched for a few minutes, and he turned to her mother, and he said, Mrs. Lynn, Gillian isn't sick, she's a dancer. Take her to a dance school. I said, what happened? Said she did. I can't tell you how wonderful it was. We walked in this room, and it was full of people like me. People who couldn't sit still. People who had to move to think. Who had to move to think. They did ballet, they did tap, they did jazz, they did modern, they did contemporary. She was eventually auditioned for the Royal Ballet School. She became a soloist. She had a wonderful career at the Royal Ballet. She eventually graduated from the Royal Ballet School, found her own company, the Gillian Dance Company, met Andrew Lloyd Webber. She's been responsible for some of the most successful musical theatre productions in history. She's given pleasure to millions, and she's a multi-millionaire. Somebody else might have put her on medication and told her to calm down.
Story at the end of the speech. So can you have a quick chat with your neighbor about these questions? What was the effect of the story on you, and did you recognize any of the 6 techniques? Go, have a 2-minute chat. In fact, I might just go to the room. finish up. And thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, I don't think I've asked you here for a while. Sorry about that. So let me start on this side. Question 1. What was the effect of the story?
Well, I definitely wanted to hear more.
Great.
So it was not boring.
So the effect was not boring.
Yeah, I wanted to hear more of the story. I was not bored. And for the technique, I'm gonna go with one technique, which is, low status and vulnerability. I think what makes it a low status and, show vulnerability is at some point it's realistic and you can relate. And at the first part of the story, I could relate. I mean, the part where they thought she had ADHD, and not the part where she became a brilliant dancer. So I guess so.
There's still time.
Yeah. So I guess that makes one technique.
Very good. Very good. Did anyone pick up another moment where Ken himself lowered his status? It's good. This is what he did. He said, I was on the board of the Royal Ballet, as you can see. Right? I mean, he's a very humoristic guy anyway, right? But he is making fun of himself, which has a neurological effect on the audience. And it's more fun in life as well, right? But that is what he's doing on purpose. He's making fun of himself. And then it's a very relatable story that includes vulnerability. I mean, a child of 8 being put into a different school for learning disability while she has so much talent and so much to give, right? Great. Other effects that the story had on you? Anyone want to add to what's been said? Good. Other techniques. Was there any lots of lots?
Yeah.
What did you get?
When they put the radio on at
Yeah,
first,
put the
so you
radio
started
on.
hearing the radio on, and then the dancing. So it was at the same time you were hearing the radio and seeing her dance. So it was a mixture of.
Very good. If you can mix senses,
Yep.
so have multi-sensory details, that's amazing, because then you've got 2 parts of your brain working, and the detail will have a better effect. Nice pickup. There was also, for those who noticed, the oak-paneled room. Right? That's like clunk, we see a certain type of room. It's just one word, really, but it's got such, like, I can feel it and see it, and there's even a smell that goes with oak paneled rooms, right? Also a multi-sensory detail. If you've got one like that, you don't have to do the rest, right? Then the multi-sensories is a really good point. Okay. And probably you can't even really remember that intellectual point that he made, but probably, maybe, some of you tomorrow will still remember that story of that multi-millionaire choreographer of Phantom of the Opera and Cats who almost got pushed into a learning disability school and put on medication because ADHD didn't exist back then. Fair enough. Actually, because of a brilliant doctor. Would you agree? There was a specialist that did think wider than the educational system. Good. All right. Now let's go. How do we use a story to set up a call to action? And in a certain sense, I did that with my baseball stadium too, in the sense that I opened with a story. Now you can open a story to prepare a yes. Because we're going for a call to action, you probably want to hear a yes from your audience. So in your preparation, you'll do some thinking about why would they say yes? What are the deeper lying reasons they'd say yes? I even call that the yes values, if you think in terms of core values, right? So then if you tell a story that will conjure the feelings that go with the values of the yes values, and then you've got a greater chance when you get to the call to action that they might say yes. So that's one way you could actually use a story that then the story is about the same values as what you think the yes values are. But I have now an example of turning around a no. Let me show you who the example is by. Oh, good. That's the guy who it's about. We know him, right? So He is speaking now, 2008, 21 hours before the booths, the voting booth open. So what is his call to action going to be? Go vote. And in fact, the Democrats know that if everyone were to go and vote, they will win. So they're afraid it might rain, because if, you know, the people that vote for them often don't have cars and all that. So he's almost going to say, I don't care who you vote for, but go and vote. So why do you think, let's put ourselves in the mind of an audience, why might someone say, nah, I'm not going to vote? What would the reasons in their head be to not go?
Thinking it's not going to make any difference.
I agree, right? So that what's one vote going to matter? My vote is not going to make a difference. That would probably be the no value. So if you think about what would the no be, and now can I select a story from my life that will actually turn the no around? So in this case, he needs a story that says, one voice does matter, right? So he's found a story, and it's set in a little place called Greenwood. So his first sentence is, finally we get to Greenwood. And the rest is without subtitles, but I hope it'll work for you. So have a look, again, for the techniques, but also for how he has thought through in advance what type of story he needs, and then how he can go into the call to action afterwards. And there's one other brilliant thing in this one, and I do use the word brilliant, then you're really doing well. And this is an example of the latter. So let's have a look.
Finally, we get to Greenwood. We pull up against, first of all, you don't know you're in Greenwood right away when you get to Greenwood. There aren't a lot of tall buildings in Greenwood. We pull up to a small building, a little field house in the park. We go inside, and lo and behold, after an hour and a half drive, turns out there are 20 people there. 20 people. And they all look kind of dangerous and kind of sleepy, like maybe they aren't really excited to be there either. But you know, I'm a professional. I've got to do what I've got to do. So I go around, I'm shaking hands, I'm saying, how you doing? What are you doing? Wait. As I go around the room, suddenly I hear this voice cry out behind me. Fire up! And I'm shocked. I jump up. I don't know what's going on. But everybody else acts like this is normal. They say, fire up. Then I hear this voice saying, ready to go. And the other 20 people in the room, they act like this happens all the time. They say, ready to go. I don't know what's going on. So I look behind me, and there's this small woman. She's about 60 years old. She's a little over 5 feet. Fire up! Turns out that she is a city councilwoman from Greenwood who also moonlights as a private detective. I'm not making this up. And it turns out that she is famous for her chant. She does this wherever she goes. She says, fire up, and the other people say, fire up, ready to go, ready to go. And so for the next 5 minutes, she proceeds to do this. Fire up, and everybody says, fire up, and ready to go, and everybody says, ready to go. And I'm standing there, and I'm thinking, I'm being outflanked by this woman here. I'm being, she's stealing my thunder. I look at my staff, they shrug their shoulders, they don't know how long this is going to go. But here's the thing, Virginia. After a minute or so, I'm feeling kind of fired up. I'm feeling like I'm ready to go. So I joined in the chant. And it feels good. And for the rest of the day, even after we left Greenwood, even though it was still raining, even though I was still not getting big crowds anywhere, even though we hadn't gotten the endorsement of the people we were hoping for, Somehow I felt a little lighter. I felt a little better. I'd see my staff. I'd say, are you fired up? They'd say, we're fired up, boss. Are you ready to go? I'd say, I'm ready to go. Here's my point, Virginia. That's how this road, it can change a city. And if it can change a city, it can change a state. And if it can change a state, it can change a nation. And if it can change a nation, it can change the world. Virginia, your voice can change the world tomorrow. In 21 hours. In 21 hours, if you are willing to endure some rain, if you're willing to drag that person you know who's not going to vote to the polls, if you're willing to organize and volunteer in the office, if you are willing to stand with me, if you're willing to fight with me, I know your voice will matter. So I just got one question for you, Virginia. Are you fired up? Are you ready to go? Fired up? Ready to go? Fired up? Ready to go? Fired up? Ready to go? Virginia, let's go change the world. Thank you. God bless you. God bless the United States of America.
All right. So, do a little analysis of this speech, or especially the story in there, right? So how did the story work for you? Which techniques did you recognize? And just what else did you think was good? Like, he is one of the best, right? Public speakers. What did he do that you think, wow, that was good, that worked for me? So analyze the story, the techniques, and just what was good about this. Go. You got 3 minutes. Go. I forgot. And finish up. And thank you. Thank you, thank you. All right, what worked for you? What worked? Good. The guy has charisma to spare, right? Say again, sorry?
He's a charismatic person.
Make it to the top, even in politics. But we can look at little things that we can copy, even without the charisma, right? Because charisma you don't copy paste that stuff. But what else? So the charisma, wow. Yes, I'm sorry, I'm focusing too much straight.
I think he has humor. It's very important. I think he speaks very slowly. He's relaxed, so you can follow him. Like, he articulates. He's like, and then when he's talking very slowly, progressively, he takes you into the mood. So there's the mood also. You get in the mood. So I think That's why also people are listening to him. I don't like the last part, but the
Good.
last part is very much like, but then
It's culturally
yeah,
specific, perhaps, right? But
That's
well
it.
said, that how he builds up the mood and how his articulation is slower in parts, and then at parts he speeds up, right? And he's even, and it really shows how he doesn't memorize at all. Like when I say doesn't memorize at all, the bit that he memorizes is the call to action, because that he thinks is so important. That's where you have to put the best quality of your thinking into the call to action. But for instance, when he says, you know, like, she was outflanking me, she was stealing my thunder, you can actually see that he's silent for a few seconds because he doesn't know what to say. But somehow, because he's still so relaxed, like you say, and he knows it's okay, I'll get there, we don't mind. In fact, it becomes a moment of vulnerability that you actually connect more, right? It's good. Thank you. Great points. Builds the mood, uses his articulation, is relaxed, and has humor. And what about the humor? Did we recognize, right? So he's lowering his status. And usually the guy with the mic automatically has a higher status. But God, if you're like presidential candidate, you obviously have a lot of high status. So when you get to make fun of yourself, it really works. What else? What techniques did we perhaps recognize? Were there any lots in this one? And if you see it again, you'll see how much the people laugh just by him doing. So he doesn't just say there's a hat, but he really shows it, right? And he gets a connection laugh on that one. And he starts off with, finally we get into Greenwood. That's a place indicator, right? He didn't have the time indicator, but just the place indicator. Very good. Good. All right. Good. I think we should wrap it. What I would love you to do is just have one last conversation. Can be your goodbye conversation if it was a buddy you're never going to see again. I don't know. But I'd like you to ask your buddy the following. So I just threw a lot of content at you. Maybe there are like 24 points in the whole thing. But if you were to remember 3 tomorrow, that would already be quite a lot, right? So can you ask your buddy, what are your 3 takeaways that you're actually maybe going to use next time you have a speech or you're trying to convince someone, you have a call to action, you have a point to make? Which 3 learning points from tonight do you think you may actually use? So let's take 2 minutes each, have a 4-minute conversation and say goodbye to each other. And then we'll have a Q&A a little bit or something, or we'll have cocktails instead. We'll discuss. Okay. What are your 3 takeaways? Discuss.
Shall we sit for the remainder of the half an hour and just respond to questions, or do you want to stay on your feet?
Sitting is good. Yeah, that's it. I've been on my feet a lot today. I got some, thanks. We can make it shorter than that.
I'm just gonna. I'm not gonna ask a question now. I'm just gonna let people ask questions because I think it's interesting stuff.
Sounds good.
If it's flowing, I'll go to the end for milky names.
Let's go.
And if it's not flowing, I might just ask one question.
Cocktails. Okay, all right.
Okay, طيب من دون mic, no problem.
You can pretend it's on.
Thank you so much. It's amazing to see an articulation, a kind of an analysis of some of the things that, you know, we all tell stories. We are all attuned to how things, when things are successful, we probably do it within a process. So that was very, very helpful. I'm certainly going to use plenty of these tips. So let's just go straight to questions. We'll take as many questions as there are. Shall we take maybe 2-3 questions and then?
Good, I can answer them all in one sentence.
Great. So let's start. Any questions for Robert?
So it's very interesting, thanks. But I had one question. The thing about vulnerability to be, would you use that in a flat organization? So if you're really the boss of a company, CEO, then playing this card will help. But in a flat organization where you have really political power struggle and you need to show your strength, would that help? That's the question, yeah.
Any other questions?
Where do you find stories?
Where do you find stories?
Good.
Okay. A third question? No? Okay. Yes?
I just want to know what kind of client do you have? What kind of people come to you for this kind of methods?
One down here. Can someone remember the question?
Yes, I just want to know the techniques you need to prepare when you want to make a story, when you want to target somebody. What are the techniques you select and how you select them?
Cool. Good. All right, let me try and go in order. So I think there was one more hand, but maybe we can, or no, let's take it too. Sorry.
It's just a simple question. Thank you for this workshop. It was very beneficial. My question is, do you recommend any other materials or resources just to continue what you started?
Cool. Good. God, making this a memory exercise, aren't we? So, in a flat organization, can you show vulnerability? Let me give two answers to that. Okay, so one is yes and one is no. So the no is right. Apply this with common sense. So if it's too much of a Shark Tank, this is not a panacea in the sense that this is something that works everywhere with all people at all times. So never throw away that common sense. So I'll go over to the yes side now, and that is actually the most beautiful people in the world are the people who can be vulnerable and strong at the same time. And that is something about, first of all, you probably need to be strong to allow your vulnerability to be present in a situation like that, right? So you're being strong even by being vulnerable. But maybe there's even a next level to that, where if you can allow your vulnerability to be present, I mean, I call it that, like it's here, it's in your body, you're being defenseless. But also, your strength is there inside you at the same time. Those are the people you can't take your eyes off, right? That is a way of being that connects and makes leaders even more attractive. So perhaps it's a way of slowly nudging a culture towards a more human culture if you do that. That's my yes side. But I'll come back to the no, right? Like common sense should never be thrown away. maybe being the first one to go there and doing it in dosages and allowing your strength to be there while you're vulnerable is a magic way of approaching other human beings. Cool. That was one.
Where do you find stories?
Where do you find stories? So I do have a couple of techniques. And funnily enough, I'm in the process of designing an online resource, sort of training module for this, in which that is a big part. So the first thing I do is I get people to just write down people, places, and periods. So the 3 Ps, right? People, places, periods. And then you think of the people in your life. Right? When I do it, I've got my Uncle Fred in Australia, who, when he died, I threw his ashes out of a plane. I had a pilot license at the time, and he had asked me if I would throw his ashes out of the plane, and something went horribly wrong. Right? The ashes ended up inside the plane instead of outside. Right? But when I think of people, I go to Uncle Fred, and then to my grandmother, and then da-da-da-da-da-da, and stories will pop up. And then I will think of places, and I think of when I lived in Scotland, and then. I would have gone there. That was my answer too. Wow, there's an exciting story there. But okay, maybe that's the easy answer too. But there is a story there. So just to finish, the people, the places that you've been in your head or with your body, the periods in your life, it's kind of like a lens just to help you find something. And they're not messy, they're not mutually exclusive or collectively exhaustive or anything like that, but it just helps you dig in the big barrel of your life. And then to answer that second part, beautiful stories are not always about aeroplanes and ashes and the exciting things, right? They can just be about important moments for you. So another thing to do is you can look at periods where your life changed, big decisions you made in your life. Gosh, you can make it about periods where nothing changed, but you did want it to, right? Then the vulnerability will creep in there as well, and it can be very beautiful. So you can look for, moments that can be very small, but you'll feel the dreams behind them, and then we will go like, wow, and connect to it. So it's not always about the excitement or the plot, but it's about the intentions and the emotions in there.
Like to observe and find a meaning in small things also.
Exactly.
Even like small things that your family does do, or your uncle or whatever, you just have to grasp the little details of things and then create maybe a big story out of it.
When I attempt writing all the time, and I have the writer's block that never actually wrote anything. Because I feel like, people who live exciting lives and, that have been experiencing a lot of things have a lot to tell, but people who have done nothing and, are not worthy of telling stories. Sometimes that's how I feel when attempting telling stories or writing stories.
Good.
So when I was cornered, I tried to write a story that is happening inside a person's head, and I failed. So yeah, that's why I was.
My guess is that if I ask here, how many people wish that you would just keep on trying it and not be stopped, that almost everyone would raise their hand. Am I right? Look at that. Because, exactly, yeah. Because it's more about what's stopping us. And we can hear the convictions that are stopping you. And this is going to sound harsh, right? So I hope you forgive me. But the reasons what stop us are the most boring parts of us, right? Why we don't do things is not the interesting parts of us. It's the reasons why you do want to write that is interesting. So you could step over the boring parts, and I know so many great writers, and they write about how they got out of bed in the morning, right? Or Oblomov didn't get out of bed in the morning, and they write about it. It's not about the excitement in the activity, but it's about you putting you in the story. That's all.
Robert's story wasn't very exciting.
And wasn't about me, more about my mother, right? So Obama's speech that he has in 2004, which I also sometimes use, he talks about his grandparents, about his father. It's about the stories because who you are is more than just one person. God, actually, I was a bit worried if I tell my baseball story, if you guys coming from Lebanon would say, God, right, like, you know, but it's not about the excitement or the war stories and all that necessarily. It's about the humanness. Thanks. Thanks for opening up too. Somebody better help me with what the next one was.
There was a question on who are your clients?
Good. Who are my clients? So I work a lot for the school that I'm part of. They're creative leaders. They're often leaders with social projects that they're trying to lead. So they come to Amsterdam, but they're creative leaders from all around the world. So I usually run this workshop with them, or a different workshop. I actually do this for the Amani Institute, which is started in Kenya and now is in Brazil and India as well. They're also social entrepreneurs. So they're people who are trying to set up also a social project and make money out of it so that they can survive, a bit like most of the people here in the arts sector. And yes, I also do it sometimes for a big corporate guy who pays me good money for it, and I'm very grateful that I also can do that. And I did this for 400 people in a bank, and they hardly paid me anything, but I still enjoyed doing it. Because I did exactly this workshop, and I developed it for them, so I wouldn't have had this workshop for you if I hadn't done it. They paid me about €1 per person. There you go. Yeah. Thank you. So yes, I do the clients I love for love, and I do the clients that pay me well, also to develop stuff, to keep me honest, to pay the bills.
So I asked about the techniques that you use. How you select the techniques if you want to say a story, or if you want to prepare a story.
Good. So there is a real difference between writing, because I've written 4 children's books and a movie script, and telling stories in front of an audience, or telling stories, you know, for effect as a leader. When it comes back to novel writing, I'm actually almost now, I've gone through a whole journey myself, in favor of not trying to apply too many techniques. So if you're in creative writing, maybe trust your subconscious more that it will come. Still, get feedback. And if they say, wow, most of it doesn't grab my attention, then start applying some techniques to find out if it can help you, right? And the biggest, the single most technique you can learn is show, don't tell, right? Don't tell me he's sad, show me he's sad, right? They'll tell you that in all creative writing. Which techniques I would use in telling a story? It's kind of more important when you're telling a story as a leader or as an entertainer maybe, that you can be short. If you're a leader in your flat organization and you've decided I'm going to use a story to open a meeting, if you talk for 15 minutes, it's probably going to be dysfunctional. So in order to be short, the most important technique to get there, again, is practice and get feedback. If this were a longer workshop, I'd have you all tell stories and give each other feedback and tell again and get feedback. So the most important technique in preparation is tell it to someone and ask them what did they like and what was missing. And then tell it to someone else and get feedback. So that you can hone your story a little bit and always look to make it shorter. And then when you've made it too short, you go back up a little bit and you should have it around 3 or 4 minutes. And look for a strong opening and a strong ending. Story has to have a strong opening, because otherwise people will just go up. So that's where you use the lots of lots, probably a time and a place indicator. Who knows, a vertical takeoff. But you have to have a strong opening. And again, at a higher level, a technique is be you, connect with the people, be there as a person to connect with them, show up, right? Show up with all your humanity and be there and be willing to show yourself. That, you can call it a technique. It goes beyond it, but it's something to not forget, please. Thanks. Cool.
Sir, the ideal time for making a story on social media, 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
It's not my expertise, but it's short.
Be short and focus on three items: time and lot of load.
Yeah. I think so. Their attention is probably the most important. I don't know, or a sexy image or something. But in terms of what's best practice there, I think if you Google it, you'll get a lot of people giving you advice on that. I don't operate on social media that much. Thanks for the question. I had
One last question about resources and materials.
just the one? Awesome.
Resources and materials.
Cool. And is it for telling stories as a leader, or for writing, or for movies, or what?
As a leader.
As a leader, good. The best resource is you yourself. Then I would say, become an aware person, become a reflective person. So maybe there's something called morning writing. That's something that you could do, is like reserve 20 minutes every morning just to write down your thoughts, and maybe to push that towards stories of anecdotes that happened, so that you start collecting a treasure chest, so you have your resources. Because then if you need a story about people changing their minds, or you need a story about perseverance or something, you've got many in your treasure chest, right? So, so you are your best resource, and the practice thing, right? Practice it with your family, with your friends. When you meet people, and if you noticed Ken Robinson's story, he made it about him because he made sure he said, "I was at lunch with Gillian," because that is totally different than if he says, "There's this woman called Gillian." But still, it was about someone really interesting that he met. So that's kind of acceptable. So if you meet people that are interesting, remember it, make notes of it, ask good questions, get them as a beautiful person in your collection, maybe.
Is there a book or two that you might recommend, or a website that with other?
So there's a guy called Marshall Gans, and a teacher in the neighborhood, I think, in his work. His work is called Public Narrative, and he teaches this at the Kennedy School at Harvard. And I learned it from someone who worked with him at Think. And Marshall Gans coached Obama in his speeches. So his work, I'm not even sure there's a book on it yet, but he's got some white papers out there online that you can find. And his work is probably the best in preparing you to tell story for a leader. The short version is, he says, tell a story of yourself, like I did with the baseball, and then he says, tell a story of the audience. I tried it by saying, I'm sure you've been in moments like that too. So I'm trying to tell a story about you, including me, and then tell the story of your call to action. He calls it story of now. Story of self, story of us, story of now. So I did use his structure in my baseball story. Marshall Gans, Public Narrative. If you Google that, you'll get that.
Ganz.
Yeah. Cool.
Any other questions? I have a quick question, Robert. What about if organizations are telling a story and it's not individuals or leaders? Do some of these techniques apply? Do you see a difference? Are we then moving into the realm of communication and deception and spinning, or are we still able to use notions of empathy and presence and personal stories with organizations or initiatives?
Great question. Yeah.
What if you're applying for funding? Like, would you be interested in reading, like, opening the funding application with a story, or you would go like, this is,
Great question. Can I first refer that maybe to some people here who have really judged funding applications. Would that be you guys? Yeah. Right? Because then I'll chip in too, but I think it's more interesting first to hear, how do you see the use of storytelling in applications for funding, right? Maybe the two of you comment first.
I think it's usually put under another title, which is usually the artist statement. And usually in the artist statement, or whatever he's working, or he or she is working with, regardless, I mean, of the medium, there is this question that you see pop up in different applications where the funder or the jury is looking to see what's the connection between you and what you're doing, and why do you feel that you are best suited to do this kind of work. And this is somehow has to do with storytelling. I think that this is the area that I'm telling vehicle or tool.
Great. Anything to add? Or?
I mean, I think that in most instances, even if you're fundraising, regardless of how you're doing it, people are always expect you to tell them stories about what it is you're passionate about, what it is that you're trying to pitch, right? So, and if you don't do that within 5 minutes, they'll say, "So just give me an example. Like, tell me, just give me an example." And so I think it's really anchors any idea is to tell a story. I mean, and that's precisely why we're having this conversation. In applications, it's a bit more formal, so it helps to break the kind of staleness of applications by being more personal, I think. But of course, it's a crapshoot. Yeah. You don't know if it's going to work or it won't, whether it will work or not. Organizations?
Cool. I'll chip in and then I'll go to organizations. So I think your point is excellent, that often in applications you are required to be abstract because they want to hear that you have that abstract knowledge. This is from my knowledge in the Netherlands. And yet, if you're only abstract, you can't really capture the mind and the hearts, the gut and the hearts of people. So I would say every abstract notion needs a story, like an example, to go there. And the other thing is often the project you're trying to achieve, and listen to those words, trying to achieve is already a story, right? So the story of a protagonist trying to achieve something difficult and dangerous is even your project. So if you can use some narrative tension there, or at least be aware of it, I would say that's a good idea. And we saw from here, people give money to people, so they want to know you as a person as well, and a bit of a story there. And then organizations, similar, what are they trying to achieve? And let me just go back to the resources, a couple more, because of this pop in my head. Maybe you've heard of Joseph Campbell. He locked himself up in the woods for 5 years trying to understand stories. And what he took with him into that hut were all the myths from all the people around the world, right? From indigenous tribes, from deep China. And he read all of them and tried to find a pattern in all the stories humankind has ever come up with. And he calls it the hero with 1,000 faces. So he's looked at all those heroic stories, and he's come up with the hero's journey. And his book is great, but it's not the easiest read. And there's an adaptation of it for screenwriters, which I can't even think of what the name is, but I think the writer is Vogler, and it's probably the hero's journey or something like that. Good. And it's more accessible, and it shows you the pattern of, the guy going over the threshold into adventure, and of course it has to go wrong, and he hits the valley of death, and he comes out, and he comes back with the elixir, and they don't believe him at first, but then they do, and then he's home, right? It's that kind of journey. Having some knowledge of that structure can help you in your organizational narrative, that you can feel it. And one other thing that we sometimes help CEOs with, if they report on how the year has been to their people, and they go something like, guys, we thought everything was going great, and in February we found out the opposition or the competitor came out with a product a little bit better than ours. We started market share. We started pushing harder in our channels, but nothing really happened. By April, we'd lost 30% of our normal targets. So what happened is we got together, we pulled in a couple of all-nighters with teams from every single part of our company. And over a 2-week period, we worked so hard that we came up with a complete new product version. We launched it in September. We've doubled our turnover now. This was the best year ever. Thank you for being part of it, right? That's a bit different than this has been a really great year. And that is a similar structure to the year story, the organization story. There's room for narrative structure in there. But like everything, you can overdo it, and that people can get sick of you trying this little technique you learned in a workshop once on them. Right? Thank you. The Writer's Journey. Awesome. Good. Ladies and gentlemen, this is one story we can end, no? Or is that a hand there? It's a waste.
Okay, great. So
dangerous.
You've had a very long day. This has been a very stimulating presentation. I'm sure we could go on and on and on. Perhaps we should explore how to sort of have a thread on issues of storytelling, especially at a time in our history where narrative is so important, but it's also the anti-narratives are also gaining strengths, and there is conflicting narratives and issues of fake news and authenticity that have never challenged our perceptions and the manner in which we accumulate knowledge in our societies. So I think we're just scratching the surface, but clearly this is something extremely important, and it's going to be central, because what social media and what communication tells us is that nothing captures people's imaginations more than stories and communicating and telling one's personal story as well. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
There's a reception with some food and drinks, so we can continue the conversations informally.
And thank you. Thanks. Thank you. And maybe we can play some music.
Certainly do.
Cool. That's good. Yay.
That was great. I love the